Hi guys, welcome to KTK Consulting. My name's Paul. Today what I want to do is just to take you through very quickly, very simply, what WHS Compliance is and why you need to be WHS compliant within your workplace. Let's start with the second one first. WHS Compliance, or Work Health and Safety Compliance, is a legal requirement in this country. It is legislated that if you run a business, you must take appropriate steps to maintain the safety of yourself and others within your workplace. If you don't, and somebody gets injured, without sounding too dramatic about it, you can lose your company, you can be fined. There was an incident that I was reading about this morning when I was doing some research for this, of a company in North Queensland. They have shift workers, and their shift workers were working 4 12-hour days. One of the shift workers then was driving home from work, had a car accident, injured themselves. The company was then liable for, I think it was $1.5 million. Now the reason for that is because they didn't have their compliance processes in place and the person working was working outside of those arrangements. So you need to be very, very careful, and it comes down to what your level of risk that you're willing to undertake is. Now, what is WHS compliance? WHS compliance in its simplest terms, and I've taken this straight from the WorkCover side of Australia, it is applying an appropriate mix of information, assistance, education, advice, incentives and deterrence. Now basically what that means is, in layman's terms, is an appropriate level of proof within your workplace that you are maintaining the safety of yourself and others. That's all it is. So if you're a very small company, you're not going to need a truckload of documents. I think in the KTK library we have something like 90 WHS documents. You could buy them all, you could get them all, you don't need them all. You just need to make sure that you've got an appropriate level to cover those who are in your workplace, and it changes especially on the job type that you're doing. The main way that you can prove that you are WHS compliant is unfortunately through documentation and paperwork. We've tried to make that simple for you, and I'll run through the documents and how the structure of them is in a second. But effectively, if somebody gets injured in your workplace, so imagine somebody's using a coffee machine and they burn themselves on the steam wand. If they burn themselves to a point where they can't work cover is going to come in. They need to prove that they will want to prove that worker was A, trained in the apparatus that they're using, B, was using the appropriate safety processes as they were doing that. So were they wearing personal protective equipment if it was required? Were they using the coffee machine in the manner to which it was designed to be used? And were there any other aspects of the incident that could have been prevented? Doesn't necessarily mean, and I don't mean to overplay this, accidents happen. So if somebody has had an accident at the workplace and you can prove that you've taken all reasonable steps to reduce the chance of that accident happening, work cover is generally going to be without a problem. If work cover finds a problem, you're liable, and that's where your business is at risk. A, because you've got to find new staff. B, if you get fined, you could lose your business. It's as simple as that. Now, the process itself, as I keep saying, doesn't have to be difficult. The way that we've structured this is, in most cases, you have a policy, a procedure, and the tools. Now, let's look at this from the documents that we have at KTK, and we'll take it from the risk management approach. Risk management in WHS is a very important aspect. It's about taking a proactive approach. So if you're looking at the coffee machine that we're talking about, risk management would be simply having a look at that, observing the person using the coffee machine and trying to work out if there's any way they could be injured, and then removing that risk prior to someone having an injury. So the policy document that we've got here, policy documents, those of you in retail might have a sales policy, you might have a refund policy, you might have a manufacturing policy, all those sort of things. In WHS it's no different. This policy goes through exactly what it is that the company plans to do and how it's going to do those processes. So in this case here we have a number of things, and it says part of the policy is it's going to adopt a risk management approach to health and safety risks. That's what the company's going to do. That's our policy. As part of maintaining our work health and safety, we are going to take a risk management approach. That's good. The policy document has that. Everyone who reads that understands that, knows that process is going to happen. Then we go to a procedure. Procedure is probably where you start to introduce these documents to your staff members, and the risk management procedure here talks about how these processes are going to be undertaken. So what do you do? So you might have a sales policy, but what's your procedure for making those sales? It's the same in work health and safety. We have a policy that says we're going to undertake risk management processes. We have a procedure here that says how we're going to do that. So in this case, without going through the whole document, the risk management steps: identify, assess, eliminate, and monitor. So that's the start of the policy document, and then it goes through each of those steps and explains how the workplace is going to do that. It might be through workplace inspections and the like. So anyone who gets this should be able to read this and understand exactly how to undertake that process. These documents are quite long. We've tried to keep them as simple as possible. We're taking these from a legal point of view. A risk management procedure might be a 5-step poster on the wall. Step 1, grab this form. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do that. Step 4, do that. It doesn't have to be a long and convoluted process. Then you go into tools. We have a couple of tools here. We have a hazard report and risk assessment form. So as you're undertaking a risk assessment, part of your identification process is you'll have a look around, and the example it says here is a broken machine guard. So you might go and have a look at a bandsaw or in a factory or in a workplace, and you'll notice the machine guard is broken. So that would be your hazard. You prioritise that hazard, you go through the possible solutions, and you outline those solutions. This is the document that work cover's looking for. They want to know that you have identified your hazards and you've implemented controls that are going to reduce the risk of that happening. If you've got this document in place, your employees have read these documents and understand how they're supposed to work. They have training in those documents. A lot of companies work with what they call SWIMs, or safe work management sheets, which is basically a how-to guide to undertake a task safely. If they've got that in place and someone still gets injured, well, I know it sounds crass, but it just means you're covered. That's all it comes down to, and that's what compliance is, making sure that you and your staff members are covered so that everybody, if God forbid an injury does happen, you can get the protection that you need. So that's what a form does, so that's one of your tools. So you've got your policies, which go through what you're going to do, the procedures, how you're going to do it. The tools are actually the forms that you use to do it. And then one last thing that we've included in most of our documentation, which is probably where you'd start, and we put these in specifically to make it easy for you to know where to start, is a checklist. Checklists are priceless in WHS because they make things a lot easier. A checklist allows you to quickly identify areas that you know, and it helps you with the monitoring process that we talked about with the risk management. So identify, assess, control, that's within your form, and then checklists help you monitor. So if you're walking around with a checklist in the morning, instead of having to work out what you need to look at, this one we've included a workplace inspection checklist. It's, is the work area clean? Are the floors clean? Are the passageways clear? Is the lighting adequate? Are the first aid facilities adequate? Etc. So it just takes you through very quickly how to manage those processes. If you've got those documents in place in each of the main areas, so consultation, risk assessment, incident management, emergency management, you're compliant. As long as your staff are aware of it. In most cases, the easiest way to do that is within your induction package, have your staff members go through each of these documents, they sign the back of it, they're clear, give them the opportunity to talk about WHS at team meetings, and that's compliance. WHS compliance, as we've hopefully shown you here, does not have to be difficult. It's simply making sure that you've got those documents in place and the processes are in place. Most importantly, if you're the management or the owners of the business, you must lead by example. If you're taking shortcuts or you are circumventing the processes that have been put in place to make sure something's done safely, if you're not doing that, you can't expect your staff members to do that. And if your staff members aren't doing that and they get injured, you're going to lose your business because you are going to be found liable if you can't prove that you've been following the processes. Again, I know it sounds overdramatic, but that's the legalities of what you're doing. You're working against the legislation, against the law, you must be compliant. But that process that we've just explained, hopefully that makes it simple for you. But if you're still confused or still have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're not in the game here of charging you thousands to explain to you a process. We'll happily explain to you over the phone. We just want you to be compliant. We just want to make it simple and easy. But as I say, any problems, reach out and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.